Welcome to the Think Factory podcast. We got one question for you. What keeps you up at night?
Welcome to the Think Factory's Workplace Podcast, powered by OGC Solutions, the podcast where we explore the ever-evolving landscape of workplace dynamics. My name is Alka Bahal. I'm a partner with Outside General Counsel, the chair of our Corporate Immigration Services Group, and I'll be your host today. I am very pleased to have with me here today Courtney Balderas-Jacob, owner and Chief Operations and Strategy Officer of a trio of ventures designed to elevate wellness and performance, including Float Wellness Spa, Evolve Human Optimization Labs, and Titan. Welcome to the podcast, Courtney.
Hi, Alka. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be with you today.
Thrilled to have you here. Why don't we start with you telling us a little bit about your trio of wellness and performance ventures?
Yeah, absolutely. So Float Wellness Spa was our first venture. It's centered around flotation therapy. So think of sensory deprivation tanks like Stranger Things, floating in 1,200 pounds of Epsom salt. We opened that back in 2016, and we also offer infrared there and massage, but it's really meant to bring wellness, to our community here in San Antonio. It was one of the first centers of its kind in our city, and we had fallen in love with flotation as a therapy and really wanted to see that something that our folks could enjoy here. Kind of born out of Float was Evolve Human Optimization Labs. So that opened in 2022, and it's really a social wellness playground. So my husband and I identified a gap in between the spa industry and like workout, right? So this wellness recovery space where it's self-care, but it's also still productive. So Evolve is structured kind of like a gym where it's open access, it's membership-based model, and you come in and you're able to kind of choose your own journey. We have 20 plus modalities there, from cold plunging to compression boots and all sorts of neurocognitive training devices, things meant to help us downshift, like massage chairs, Tri-Vibe. And folks can just really come in, and whether they're recovering from, their daily workouts or just life, the wear and tear of stress of life, it's a space for people to come and be in community with each other. And then Titan is our third one. And so that's really the cold plunge tanks that we offer in our space, and also as a part of our Evolve franchise. We went ahead and got those because they're beautiful, and it gives us a competitive edge. And I love that you can fit 3 people in them. So my mom, my sister, and I can all plunge together.
Oh, that sounds so fun.
Yeah.
There's some really incredible sort of organizations, institutions you've created, and I would love to try them. But your career trajectory was a little bit unusual. You didn't exactly start out in wellness.
Yeah, no, I actually was in higher education for 15 years prior to joining my husband with our businesses in 2023 full time. Yeah,
Tell me a little bit about what you used to do, and do you find that any of your experiences in education have lent themselves, any of the skills or knowledge that you gained, been helpful in your sort of career as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, absolutely. So my husband is really the entrepreneurial risk taker of the two of us. So when we first met, I was already working in higher education, and that was kind of something that I fell into, but I started in international education. So on the immigration side, doing visas and the things that for our students and researchers to come over. And I really loved that work. But something about being in higher ed allowed us, something that was important about that was that it allowed us the stability. So my husband's a first generation college student. My parents were first generation college students as well. So I grew up more privileged than my husband did, but still neither of us came from like generational wealth that was going to allow us to open our own businesses. Mm-hmm. So working in higher ed provided that stability for us to really spend the first half of our marriage saving for these endeavors that we knew we wanted to take on. And we did know that we always wanted to be in wellness. We wanted to bring something healthy to our community, something that brought people together and brought people joy. And that's kind of how we ended up on that path. And so, yeah, I worked full time for the first, like I said, for up until 2023. And through that, a lot of my work was around strategy. I helped start the Dreamer Resource Center at UTSA. And so I was working alongside our president and lots of different constituents. And then in my last role, I was actually the director for diversity, equity, and inclusion at a private liberal arts school. And so really got a chance to understand different environments, but also a lot of bureaucracy and how to still push things forward with the different constituents, which has really helped on the business side, not only within our small businesses, but also now that we've been franchising, right, we're bringing other folks into the fold as strategic partners to grow, evolve in Texas. And a lot of what I learned, not only around organization, but also that the importance of partnerships and how to build loyalty and investment and trust across, really diverse bridges has been helpful.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. So having been and still being in leadership positions, what are the traits that you believe are essential for effective leadership in the workplace today?
I definitely think radical candor is a core value of ours that we talk about a lot, not only at Float, Evolve, but also within the franchise. So where we're caring personally and challenging directly. As leaders, it's really important to be not just willing, because sometimes people are willing to, right, like be brutally honest, but that's not what radical candor is about. Being able to have the hard conversations with folks, one for your own personal growth, but also for theirs. It's how we help people grow, and it's how we help people thrive in their positions. I think that's super important. Also empathy, taking the time to really take a step back and understand where folks are coming from and what they're dealing with. We're all dealing with a multitude of things on a daily basis, certainly weekly and throughout the year. And so making sure that we're creating space for grace. Yeah.
Circling back to the concept of radical candor, tell me a little bit about that. How do you implement that in your daily work life?
Yeah, so one of the important things is that we educate folks about that as being one of our core values when we bring them on, right? So we talk about why we believe in radical candor and why we believe in challenging directly but caring personally, so that we're really, and in any given moment, so right, in a particular day, focusing on one instance rather than trying to make it about, for the last several weeks you've been doing this. Like, that typically doesn't, we're not perfect, but that typically isn't going to happen, because we're trying to address things as they come up in the moment based on the circumstances surrounding that specific incident. Now, of course, if we see patterns over time, then we name those patterns in other discussions, but really trying to say, like, okay, so this doesn't typically happen. I want to check in with you and find out, like, there was this, perhaps it was like a major oversight, right? Something didn't get sent or something didn't get done, or an interaction didn't happen in a way that is aligned with how we conduct business and how we treat each other. Taking the time to unpack that with someone to really understand what's going on also allows them to take that moment to breathe, self-regulate, and understand, like, what was going on in that. And almost always it's not about that specific incident, right? There's other outside factors that contributed to that, whether it's stress, poor sleep, family things going on, whatever else that might be.
Sure, that kind of fits in with the sort of newer theory of, we bring our whole selves to work. And so you can't just assume people are going to be uninfluenced, if you will, by other things that are happening in their lives. And I assume with the radical candor, you're talking about the incident in the moment, in the event, and how the person's feeling and might be behind it. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and taking the time, the care personally part is that we take time outside of any incidences that we're building those relationships with our team, right? So we're connecting on an individual basis. We make sure that we do team building regularly, making space for fun, just to unwind, so that when challenges do come up, it feels genuine. yeah, because we've definitely understood that, especially after COVID, we're whole people. And while work has to take up too much of our time, I believe, the reality is that, yes, we can still be our whole selves during our workday and at our workplaces.
Absolutely. So turning a little bit to the workplace culture, you mentioned fun. So what are some of the key elements that you work to implement to contribute to a positive workplace culture at your places?
So we try to do a balance of different things and also take into consideration accessibility in the type of fun that we're having. So we do try to change it up. But what I mean by that is, right, so we had an individual on our team who's currently pregnant, and we had planned to do originally earlier, because we planned this like 6 months ago, that we were going to do all of these different field day games kind of in our backyard. And we were able to modify that so that she could still engage in that. She's very competitive too. And so wanted to be a part of all of it, but wanted to change it up a little bit, so that she could still participate fully. I'm a bit of an introvert, and so I don't like to be put on the spot for some of the traditional icebreaker things. I really don't like forced engagement, and so I don't like to push that on other people. So with as much time as possible, like if we're going to have sharing events, I try to give our team advance notice of what that's going to be, kind of give them some context, of course, let them know who's going to be there. For us, it's just the team typically, but so that people can prepare in whatever ways they need to, so that they're comfortable and willing to be more vulnerable typically, if they have advance notice. I know for me, that's how I am. Whereas like my husband, you can put him on the spot at any moment. He's really happy to just go for it, which is why he's our CEO. So making sure that we have space for that, just doing things that are like high energy team building, whether it's axe throwing or whatever else, to also doing things that are more low key, where we're just hanging out in the space together as community without the pressure of having guests around us.
Yeah, I can imagine. What strategies do you use to keep your team motivated?
We do a lot of incentivizing for our team, right? Because both of our spaces, Float and Evolve, are membership based, which can feel sometimes, so I'll use the bad S word, salesy. But so really talking about what we do, because we believe this, is that we're not selling anything. We're making these modalities available to our community that they might not otherwise have access to. And so what we're trying to do is get people to commit to their wellness. So we also talk to our team. So incentivize them. We talk to them about committing to their personal wellness. So they get access, because they're sister businesses, they get access to both spaces. And we're regularly encouraging them to take advantage of that, so that they are taking time to recover mentally, physically, emotionally, so that they can pour into others. And that's actually really cool, because it's one of the biggest perks that they love. We were surprised by that when we asked, because we do some monetary and other gift giving, incentivizing as well, but we asked our float crew a couple of years ago, like, what would you like? And they said, as a bonus thing, and they said, actually, what we would love is if you would give us a float that we can gift to somebody else. And we were so touched by that. So that's something that we do regularly for the team too, is allow them to gift services to loved ones or folks in need in their lives.
That's really cool. What a great idea.
Yeah.
So the float started in 2016. So what happened during COVID?
Oh man, during COVID. So we actually almost doubled our footprint in January. Let's see, we started our expansion in late 2019 and doubled our float footprint. We opened that in March. So what we did with that was we added a salt lounge, we added an additional tank room, we did a large yoga sauna, so new services, and of course more square footage, which means more rent. And we were open for about 1 week, and then COVID hit and we had to shut down fully. We immediately jumped into problem solving mode. We don't believe in standing still and or waiting for the other shoe to drop. And I think, a lesson that was hammered home for so many, even during COVID, was that you have to really be empowered to find those answers yourselves, because no one's coming in to save us, unfortunately. And so we did a lot of research, applied for all the grants we could. We were able to pay our team throughout those 8 weeks of shutdown because of grants. So that was awesome, and made sure people were taken care of. We continued to communicate with our core audience over at Float as a small business. Many of these folks had supported us since we opened in 2016. And we were really touched to see that we didn't have a lot of cancellations during those 8 weeks. People really hung in with us and continued to pay their memberships, which allowed us to continue to be available to when we reopened. So we reopened our community, and because we had been already known as a really clean space and a really caring space, people thankfully trusted us to come back in. We, of course, had to make modifications, more time for our appointments, for cleaning, additional layers of cleaning, all of these things. But we reopened, and actually 2021 was our largest year of growth at Float. We just grew so much. People really needed to come in and decompress. They needed to come in and see other people, but still not necessarily be around other people and be safe in their private rooms for their services. And so that was really exciting. There were 5, I believe, Float centers in San Antonio at the time that COVID hit, and we were one of 2 to survive that. Yeah.
That's terrific. I imagine your services were even more in demand as COVID went on and eventually wound down.
Yeah, they really were. It was exciting to see, and very, eye-opening to hear those stories of how much it helped people heal from the trauma and, the loss of people. People lost people they loved during that time as well. So
very true, very true. We tend to forget that. So circling back to your employees, you had this lovely core team of employees. It looks like you were able to kind of keep them along. What skills do you think are most critical for success in the workplace today, which is very different than the workplace 10 years ago?
Yeah, no, for sure. I think being honest with your employer about where you're at in your life. One thing that we ask everybody, not only during the interview phase, but also checking in throughout the year and over years as we've had people, is what is their why? Why are they with us? And of course, part of that is often going to be financial. Even for me, when I was in higher ed, I believed in what I was doing, but part of the why was the financial stability piece of being able to do that while growing our businesses. And having something stable. But if the why needs to be aligned with the core mission of the company, right? How they operate, what they believe in, because if you have that dissonance, the moment things get tough, that's I have found, that's the biggest thing that is going to make or break folks, whether they're going to stay, if they believe in the why, and if they believe in the core values that their leadership believe in, but also see that those play out, right? In higher ed, there's tons of mission statements, lots of core values. They're spouted all the time. And almost always, maybe one will actually show up in the way that they operate weekly. So I think for employees, really, really understanding your personal why of why you're at a space, and then making sure that there's alignment. The other thing I would say too is flexibility. I think that, in this modern age where we've got a lot of social media and a lot of centering of the self, it's really important to remain flexible. And that's where empathy kind of comes into, being willing to take a step back and say, this isn't all about me. Especially, and I hate to talk so much about conflict, but every job is awesome until you have some type of conflict. And so when those moments occur, remembering to be flexible, remembering to pause and try to figure out okay, it's probably not all about you. Even in the times where sometimes it feels like things are directed at you, sometimes it's just bad players. And definitely that could be some just insidious behavior. But I think pausing for that to say, okay, in the me world that we live in, is this really about me at this moment?
So true. And how do you engage with employees? How do you keep those lines of communication open?
Through regular checking in, whether that's, messages on Slack or dropping by our spaces. Certainly, the normal hallmark things of celebrating birthdays or landmark times that someone has been with us, but just checking in, right? Like going out to lunch, reaching out to someone, like, let's grab coffee together. Those are good ways to keep the lines of communication open, especially during, the healthy times, the healthy periods, so that when somebody is feeling vulnerable or dejected, that they feel like this is a safe space to come to. And being really honest about that, right? Like, that I'm not perfect. And, sometimes I might feel frustrated. This is like telling people too that, like, you'll know if I'm frustrated with you. I will let you know, meaning, and not in frustration, but like, please don't read into things. If you're ever concerned about something, like, we are open. Ask us, because we believe in honesty and transparency, and really don't like the passive aggressive BS that can sometimes show up in a workplace. So creating those strong spaces, and relationships with employees helps, when things get difficult, and or when things are hard, when they're in any type of loss or financial strain as well.
Absolutely. So clearly, this, work-life balance, mental health, and all the factors that affect us in life are important and may affect you in the workplace. What kind of advice can you give to leaders or managers to help effectively assist employees with managing that work-life balance? Is it more than just communication?
I think, yeah, I think it is more than just communication, right? Because we also have to take action. So the biggest frustration that I ever had when I was in, felt like a cog in a wheel, was there was lots and lots of communication, and there was lots of talk about transparency and vulnerability, but there was no action put into place by leadership behind that showed me, one, that they were actually willing to do that, and or two, if and when somebody was willing to be vulnerable and go to them, an employee, me even, or a fellow employee was willing to go up there, like, nothing was done after that. So it's one thing to create space to hear these things and to create a seemingly safe environment space where people can voice concerns. Like, you can do that and then still not be a healthy environment if you're not then following up, taking action on the things that you hear. And, for us, it's really important that we explain the thought process behind a decision, and or the why if we can't, right? And I'm a huge fan of yes and, or no but, and like trying to find, I'm not even going to say a halfway point, because that's not always even possible in business, especially for small businesses. I think that, there's a lot of pressure, and sometimes the margins are small there, and that's just the reality. It's become more difficult since COVID, and, in the last, even in the last 5 months, it's difficult. We love to be generous, but the ability to be generous is sometimes not always fully in our hands if we want to survive as a business. So we can be generous in other ways, right? Like, trying to find creative solutions to things that folks are asking for. Like, we can't take you all on a cruise. That's not in our budget, but we absolutely host everybody at our house for, like, your dream party, or we can find a place to go out to in the city. I think too, when it's important for leaders to make sure that their team feels safe, like physically, emotionally, and mentally safe in their spaces. And so when we've had things that arise where, whether it was another employee or a guest that made somebody not feel safe, that we make it really clear we have a no tolerance policy for that kind of thing, whether it's workplace bullying or, bullying from an external vendor or guest. We just do not tolerate that.
It's a good policy. I can imagine that's going to be very frustrating in particular your environment.
Yeah, but it says a lot, like, when people see that, because I saw that so many times where, spaces said that and then nothing was done. And it's really great to be able to make those decisions as a leader and then see that somebody immediately feels relief or immediately feels better knowing that they voiced, I didn't feel safe, or I didn't feel, I felt bullied, and then something was done about it. There's so many injustices in this world. When we have the ability to actually address one, even if it's uncomfortable, we should, doing the right thing, even when it's hard.
Absolutely, and that follow through is really key, and it engenders trust, like you said. So that's fantastic. So the job market's really competitive, and I know you have some particular needs in some of your facilities. What do you think what are the biggest challenges in recruiting talent in today's competitive job market?
I think the biggest challenges are speaking to the diverse audience that we have now, the age range, right? Because we've got folks that are in their early 20s to individuals who are in their 50s, nearing 60s, employed with us. And so being able to speak to an audience that's that diverse, for us in the wellness industry, I think that I don't know. I think it's a little bit easier because, people have understood now the importance of not just health, but also general wellness. And so we're able to attract people with that. I would say if you're in an industry that's not in health and wellness, bringing in health and wellness into your space could be something that's really attractive to potential employees. I actually took a job once because they said that they would give us, an extra 30 minutes to just go for a walk outside of our lunchtime, and we could have that. We just needed to communicate with our bosses that was occurring. And for me, like, that literally was enough to be able to step outside or know that if I got really frustrated, I could just go for a walk. That they supplemented, of course, with like gym membership, those types of things. I think other ways that you can be creative in is word of mouth, right? Actually, is making sure that you have a fun, healthy space in-house. Our number one way that we get people actually right now is organically through word of mouth of other employees or guests that see our space and see how happy our employees are, and proactively submit resumes and say, give me a call whenever you have an opening. So I think being a space that does that has like exciting energy, is definitely something that can set you apart, because it is extremely competitive out there for staff right now.
Yeah, that's amazing to come to a place as a service provider and then thinking, oh, this place is so great, I want to work here. That's quite a testament.
Yeah.
So you brought up a good point. We are sort of embarking for the first time on this 5 generations of individuals working in the workplace. And as you said, the communication styles are very different. Going from the baby boomers down to I guess Gen Zs are the ones coming in now. How is that affecting you? Is that also reflected in your client base? Do you see the same things? And does that pose any unique challenges in terms of either managing the workplace or soliciting clients, but talking to clients or presenting information?
Yeah, it definitely does pose, I don't know about challenge, opportunities, right? So opportunities for us to think outside of the box, one for our employees, but also, even in the franchise and for our guests. We've got these 3 different kind of stakeholders in our businesses, and for each of them, we do kind of have this span. And so what I love is always thinking about like meeting people where they are. And in business, again, I won't be I love the idealistic fluffiness about it, and I love to get like all pruny and the squishiness of it. But even in business, like, you can still meet people where they are in a way that makes sense. So like, we have things that require a lot of like tech at Evolve. Some of the stuff is really techy, but then we also have positions where you don't have to be a tech expert to be there. And so if that's not somebody's strength, then let's find a way that we can fit them in, and have them still be a good team player and contributing in the way that they need to, that doesn't require them to do all that tech stuff. And or if it's too, for us, I should say, especially, we think about if it's too complicated, then we're doing something wrong. So let's make this less complicated so that kind of anyone could roll into this job, whether it's their passion or their expertise. Like, it should be, even somebody who's just passionate about it should be able to do it. So from the guest experience side, the same thing. Evolve is very much a self-serve model. And again, we do have a lot of tech there, but we've got our folks, our team members, we call them our lab techs who can help people, especially our older clients. They're available to help them and make them feel completely comfortable no matter what modality they're wanting to use. And then for our young folks, right, like younger folks who maybe want to be a little more challenged, like giving them a little bit lighter and more free reign, like go ahead and have at it, and then just come to us if you have any questions. So I think creating a space that is really efficient and easy to use, which again also goes for our management and for our Z's, is if we're creating policies and processes that are too difficult to remember and or to follow, then we're doing it wrong. It's not as efficient as it could or should be, and or maybe there's like extraneous stuff in there. I love writing, and I being strategic is one of my favorite things, but also in that sometimes can get overcomplicated. So I'm like, is this my favorite thing or is this the necessary thing? Is kind of the gauge that I go by. And so sometimes I give up, but a lot of times I give up my favorite thing for the necessary thing so that more people can be reached.
Yeah, that's very valuable insight. So what advice would you give to leaders looking to navigate the future of the workplace?
I think just really to stay up to date, whatever your industry is, staying plugged in, whether that's with, the national organization, if you have one that governs your industry, certainly stay plugged in for that because you want to know any legal changes or challenges that are coming up. Making sure that our industry remains really open and actively recruiting diverse folks into the space is something that matters to me. And so I stay really plugged in with that. I think also staying up to date on new things that are coming out, new trends, whether they're positive or negative trends. It's important to know, what's coming and what's kind of bubbling around. I think the other thing is being aware of what your community's needs are and the wants are in your particular space, because that does vary. Even for us in Texas, it's a huge state. So from one city to the next could be a very different population need and trends. And so making sure that we're on top of that, not only for our guests, but for our franchisees, so that we're doing that heavy lift of educating them about what's going on there.
Yeah, absolutely. What predictions do you have for the future of your industry, the wellness generally, in the next few years?
Yeah, I think it's going to just continue to grow. Health and wellness has really exploded since COVID, and I think it's just going to continue that upward trajectory because people are going to continue to prioritize their health and wellness. Businesses are going to continue to prioritize that for their employees. It's always exciting to see those partnerships expand. And I think that it's also, so with what we do with Evolve, we are a no appointments model because we found that was really the number one barrier to people coming in, was having to schedule this appointment and having to, try to make their work life, their family life fit around this and plan ahead. And really, when we need things critically, we just need them. As far as like, if I've got a tweaked neck, I didn't plan for that. Like I woke up and now I'm 40 and now I've got this weird tweak that I never knew about before. So I need that fixed like today. And I only maybe have 20 minutes to go try to fix it. And so I think the more that health and wellness can be flexible and, remove those barriers to access. The other piece too that I see coming to us is what we see a lot of in Europe, kind of around bathhouse culture, where it's more affordable. For a long time, health and wellness in the United States has been this very elite industry, or it tries to feel that way even, right? Like you have to be in a certain echelon or have certain things to deserve to take the time to indulge in these things. And it shouldn't be an indulgence. It should just be things that we're able to access. And I hope to continue to see that shift. I think it will continue to happen across the industry. And that would be super impactful for Americans as a whole, for our health, wellness, and mental health.
Yeah, that's such a great point. Never really thought about it that way. And you're absolutely right.
Mm-hmm.
And what about for you? What's on the horizon, say for the rest of 2025 and maybe going into 2026?
Yeah, for the rest of 2025, we're really focusing on franchising for Evolve. We really want to grow in Texas. It's Float is doing really well, so that I don't mean to leave them out, but we've got rock stars over there, and so we're really trying to grow this idea of Evolve and franchising in Texas for the specific reason that we do want this to be brought to more communities. I want people to be able to afford to come in, where it's like $20 a visit and you get to feel better. It's just so important. So yeah, we're looking to do that for the rest of this year and into 2026. Who knows? Once a week, a new idea comes up, and we have to like not squirrel and stay focused. Yeah,
that's terrific. So, can you tell our listeners where they can find your organizations, where they can find out more about you?
Yeah, we're on all the normal Facebook and Instagram. So our handles at Float SA, and then at Evolve Human Labs, and then our website is www.evolvehumanlabs.com and www.floatsa.com. You can, folks are welcome to connect with me. My email is Courtney@floatsa.com. I'm happy to answer questions or just connect. I love meeting new people, whether it's prospective entrepreneurs or folks already in established industries. It's always fun to connect.
Well, thank you, Courtney. I hope lots of folks reach out and check out your places. Thank you so much for bringing these terrific wellness ideas to Texas, and hopefully you'll expand beyond that at some point.
Thank you.
Thanks, listeners, for joining us today. This is Alcohol with Courtney Balderas-Jacob signing off. Until next time.